Good evening and welcome to Art World Innovators, exploring stories of innovation in the art world. I'm your host, Susan Cohn, and you're listening to UMFM 101.5 at the University of Manitoba. Our guest this evening is renowned French sculptor Pascal Pierme, born in Saint-Raphael, France, where he grew up and completed his degree in art history and technique. Following this training, he earned his degree in aerograph technique in San Diego. In 1997, he moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he currently has his studio. During the course of his career, he has worked in collaboration with architects on an urban project, done a working residency in a bronze foundry in Italy, exhibited in cities from Santa Fe, New Mexico at the Museum of Contemporary Art to Toshima City Art Olympia in Tokyo. He has exhibited at the Teos Art Museum in New Mexico, the Florence Biennale in Italy, the Royal Academy of Art in London, UK, as well as participated in many national and international solo and group exhibitions. Pascal's works can be found in many permanent public and private collections, including ABC News Studio, Nobel Prize recipient Roger Guillemin's collection, Pierre Cardin's collection in Cannes, Casablanca Records in New York, and many others. Numerous art publications have featured his story, exhibitions in sculpture, and Artworks International Incorporated has published the book Pascal in 2006 as part of their acclaimed artist series. Welcome to Art World Innovators, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you to you.
Thank you. You're a widely acclaimed sculptor and have become known as a master of medium for your innovative sleek works in a wide variety of woods and other materials. What are a few of your earliest memories that may have inspired your ideas and passions for creating your work?
Well, when I was a kid, I was already very good at it. I was not very good at spelling. I was not very good in mathematics, but I was really good at drawing and making little thing, what you do at school, using your hand, like little mock-up and stuff like that. So my friends, when I was a kid, called me Picasso. That's funny. And the main thing happened to me is I ended up by going to school to become a technician dentist. And that was extremely interesting by using so many different plastic and resin and plaster and gold and steel and different materials. And you have to be really good with your hand to be a technician dentist. I didn't like to do that very much because it was not for me, let's say. It's an amazing job, but what I find out is during the weekend, I was more interested by going to the lab and doing more artistic stuff. So that was the beginning of it,
And do you recall anyone in your family who did artwork that may have influenced you as well?
Very much, very much. I grew up around my grandfather, who was a wood sculptor. He was not very contemporary artist. He was more good with his hands. He was a painter, but very traditional, very academic painting. When I was 18 years old, I met my biological father, who I didn't know before, and he was an artist in California, in San Diego. So I flew from France, and I went to San Diego, and this is where I learned the technique of aerography. And meeting my biological father when I was 18 was already amazing, but on top of that, he was an artist. And I totally embraced the lifestyle and all the newness of what it represents for me. I thought at that time that was impossible for me to become an artist. I was too young. I was afraid of the artist world. I could never imagine that I would become one day. But I really liked the idea, so it came later, much later.
Well, your sculptures certainly capture a feeling of dynamic movement and sensual rhythm that bring your sculptures to life. How does music play a part in your creative expression?
Well, I have to say I'm probably a frustrated musician. When I was 10, 11 years old, my mom put me at music school, and I was supposed to learn piano, and I did solfege. I learned the notes for 2 years without to touch a piano. I was so frustrated. I ended up I hate the teacher. I hate everything about music. But in me, I miss it. I remember I could have been a good musician, but unfortunately, the approach that I had to the piano was a nightmare. 2 years of learning the notes, all the solfege. I don't know if you say solfege in English, but and without to touch the piano was the worst. So I feel like I could have become a musician. And then if some feelings of music is in my work, I'm not surprised at all. I understand the music.
How do you think the environment in France and Santa Fe and the cultures and the natural elements that surround you have contributed to your creative designs and sculptural forms?
Well, the desert. The desert is definitely, the west of United States is so beautiful and so open. I don't know why, but the sky seems to be much bigger here than in France. How the sky could be bigger somewhere, you could think. But I believe the desert is a magic place. It's a very inspiring environment for writers, for poets, for, any sensitive souls. I believe it worked for me. It's this feeling of everything is possible, of freedom. Also, I think that the environment here push you to be yourself, to be who you really are. So for any creative people, is excellent. That's not surprising why so many artists are living in Santa Fe. We say there's a lot of artists in Santa Fe, but it's not about Santa Fe. It is, of course, but it's also the West, the open space.
You've expressed an interest in creating a fundamental alphabet in your pieces with which to speak your own language. So what are some of the reoccurring themes in your sculptures and paintings that connect you to your viewer with that silent visual language?
Well, when I talk about that, like creating my own language, it's actually to be free to talk about any subject. What I mean is, I think for me at least, I don't want to talk for any artist, but I think it's good for an artist to have your own language in a sense where you could talk about nature, you could talk about a car, you could talk about a personality, a president, you could talk about an animal, and always have your language. And that's the way I see it. So by inventing your own alphabet, it's not like if I'm writing a novel or a poem. I invented my own alphabet to be able to do anything I want when I can or when I want or when I feel it. Right. So it's much more open for me. That's why I was talking about that.
So, for example, when you work on a variety of scales with outdoor sculptures and small intimate pieces, what do you hope the viewer will experience and feel and sense as they view your work? And can you describe a piece for us?
Well, I heard in a movie recently, I think it's A New Star is Born, I heard a sentence that I like very much. One of the moments the guy say, well, it's not enough, then you have talent, you have to have something to say. And I like that. So what I have to say, unfortunately, is not necessarily a clear message. All my life, I've been more attracted to questions than answers. So I think if my work is seen as something more as a key than an open door, I like that. I just want my work to be another question for the viewer or to excite an open mind. That's what I will hope.
And do you often start with maquettes or drawings, or do you prefer the spontaneity that allows you to change your direction and flow at any time during your process?
That may be a long answer. I'm going to try to be short here.
Okay.
I truly believe, that the real creativity, when you are really good at it, when something like a magic moment, is not when you know what you're going to do. Is when you don't know, when you surprise yourself. When spontaneity is used, like when it comes. So the problem is I believe a sculptor has to know what he's going to do way before to do it. And a painter can be more creative, meaning a sculptor, 80% of the work is more work. It's working, and 20% is creativity. A painter would have like almost 100% of his time on the painting more as creative. So what I'm trying to do is because a sculptor, if he's taking a decision, it's difficult to go back. So, and how to know what you're going to do and be spontaneous in 3D work, because even my wall pieces are with 3D technique. So the thing is, it's a good way for me to use the 3D technique for the wall pieces as well as the sculpture. But the key to me is to be the most spontaneous possible, to surprise yourself, to have this feeling. But at the same time, as using technique of 3D, it's to pushing as far as possible the non-return decision. So to me, it's yes, you need a drawing first. Yes, you need an idea, but it has to be very open. Let's say if I make a metaphor with traveling, I say, okay, let's go travel in Japan, but I don't want to know where I'm going to sleep, where I'm going to land, and who I'm going to meet.
Some of your current indoor and outdoor works are in steel, and the challenges and advantages of working in this material?
I'm working with somebody who is specialized in steel. I do work on the steel pieces, but I don't have the tools for that. So my main thing is wood. When I work with steel, I have another studio where a technician is working for me, and we do those steel pieces. The steel pieces that originally are made more for the big pieces, for outside. Outdoor pieces in wood, it's more difficult, especially in my style of work. It doesn't like the crack and the damage that the weather does on the wood, even if I love wood sculpture, wood outdoor sculpture from other artists. So originally it was more for outdoor things. Also, I do smaller pieces in steel. It's to see my work and to think in a different way, because in sculpture, again, each shape must have the perfect medium. Like some pieces in wood, they are perfect in wood. You don't want to see it in bronze or in marble, and some pieces in marble will look bad in wood. So to me, to see my work in a different medium, it's a different approach of it. So I see it in wood, I do it in steel, and then I go back to the wood, and it's a good way to understand better. It's a little bit forcing myself to change environment.
And you're also fortunate to be one of the artists Artworks International incorporated partners with to increase your national and global recognition and advance your career. Can you tell us about this innovative organization and how it's been helpful to you?
Well, this organization is just amazing. Samantha Ferguson, who is managing it, is a fantastic person. The promotion for artists is essential, very important. Doesn't mean anything if an artist is by himself, and have talent. People have to know about it, So the promotion is excellent for it. And Artwork International knows what to do, how to help artists, how to understand the artist between the two worlds, between the commercial, the gallery, the business world, and the artist studio, and the artist soul. So that's very important to have this link there. And they are really good to help you for that. So it's essential for me, absolutely.
What was one of the most exciting exhibitions that you were a part of, and what was that experience like?
I think to have a solo show is very heavy and difficult because all the responsibility is on you, but at the same time you have all the glamour of it, and it's a strange experience to have your solo show because you work for months and months and months and months, and suddenly you see all the work you did for a year in one space. And the communication between the pieces are such a good experience to see how the different pieces that I did, for example, for a year, how they communicate to each other. And that's only in a solo show you can see that. Now, having a group show is interesting because, again, you introduce your own artwork to other artists and other shapes, other colors. It's like going to a party. It's like a dinner for two people or a big party. So both are really good. I don't have a bad experience to mention about that. It's always good. Even when it's difficult, it's always a good school anyway.
Do you have any upcoming exhibitions you'd like to share with our audience?
Actually, right now, my gallery in New York, Michel Mario, is showing my work it's actually a solo show at a booth at Scope in New York this weekend. I was supposed to be at Volta, but Volta has been canceled this year for technical reasons, and Volta is right next to the Armory show in New York, but I think they had a technical problem, so they moved everybody from Volta to Scope, and there's no Volta this year, unfortunately. But it's a good show.
I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us tonight and sharing your insight and story with our audience. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you very much.
That was French sculptor Pascal Pierme speaking with us from a studio in Santa Fe, New Mexico. For those of you just tuning in, you are listening to Art World Innovators on UMFM 101.5. Our guest this evening is Cal Lane, an internationally acclaimed Canadian sculptor known for innovatively transforming industrial steel products and ordinary objects into sculptures and lacy artworks. She holds a bachelor's degree in fine arts from Nova Scotia College of Art and Design and a master's degree in fine arts and sculpture from State University of New York. Cal has been featured in the Prominent Sculpture magazine and was the recipient of the International Sculpture Centre's 2001 Outstanding Student Achievement in Contemporary Sculpture Award. Cal's tapestry delicately cut ornate patterns into large steel and iron structures, creating sensitive, alluring, and aesthetically captivating pieces. Her work is in numerous collections and has been exhibited on a wide range of solo and group exhibitions nationally and internationally, including the Sydney Biennale in Australia, galleries in Europe, the UK, the United Arab Emirates, and the US, and more. Here to speak with us today about her exceptional sculptures and artistic career is Cal Lane. Welcome to Art World Innovators, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Susan. Nice to talk to you on the phone.
Thank you. Your carved sculptures are very innovative with captivating narratives and titles. How do you come to your ideas, and what is your process for unfolding these narratives into your unique sculptures?
It's always hard to know how to start to talk about these things because I went through such a wide-ranging process to get to where I am now. I started art school a little bit later in life. I started my undergraduate degree when I was 30. So before that, I had many different occupations that I was traveling through. I grew up on Vancouver Island and grew up in my mother's hair salon and, grew up in a working-class family, so I wasn't encouraged to go to art school. So I was sort of pushed to become a hairdresser because that's what I knew. And so I did it very, very briefly after high school. But it was not my world. I didn't fit in there, to say the least. I was a tomboy. Never wore makeup. I used to get in trouble for not combing my hair all the time. So I went from hairdressing to welding. I was reading the paper one day, and there was an ad for becoming a welder to go through trade school. And I thought, perfect. I can dress like a slob. I can curse. I can be more myself, not have to wear makeup. And so I went to Camosun College on Vancouver Island, went through trade school, became a welder. And just those two contrasts, that was sort of the seed of everything I started making after that. Once I eventually did go to art school in Nova Scotia, my experiences as both a hairdresser and then becoming a welder, just those social contrasts I found fascinating. I guess I've always been a person that is confused by how people judge you for seemingly meaningless reasons. Both as a hairdresser, I was considered a failure because I didn't wear makeup and didn't poof my hair up. And likewise, once I became a welder, people judged me because I had long hair. They wanted me to have short hair. So my sculptures became about that, about judging social, gender, and visual objects. As a sculptor, I love working with steel for that reason. I actually like it as almost performance art, cutting steel, cutting this big masculine, cold industrial material into a delicate, feminine-like material. I thought was an interesting contrast, both as an object and as a process.
Have any of the earlier modernist sculptors and their works captured your imagination and experimentation and discoveries in your practice, especially with steel? That's something you may have seen in other artists' work.
Definitely, especially, going through the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. It was very modernist-based. The sculpture philosophies were about the purity of sculpture, truth to materials. It's a very macho and masculine world, the sculpture world. I would say when I was in college, I loved the idea of disintegrating those philosophies in a sense. My first big show at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia was a series of really large I-beams that I had hand cut into lace patterns. And that was really kind of poking fun at both worlds, poking fun of that phallic, masculine, industrial world, and then me hand cutting it into a delicate object. I mean, I love modernism, but I just loved playing with it because now I think, because modernism was sort of celebrating the Industrial Revolution and manufactured objects. And we're kind of not in that world anymore. We're realizing the pollution and the harm that those sorts of companies had created. And so the handmade object is becoming more of a relevant object, I think, to me. So taking this industrial symbol and hand carving it into a handmade, delicate object was sort of poking fun at modernism in a sense, or at least questioning it.
I'll also, in 2012, you exhibited your work at the 18th Biennale of Sydney in Australia, All Our Relations. What was this Biennale about, and how did you become involved?
I was invited to that. I think why they thought of me, the directors, was because one of the venues is Cockatoo Island, which is an island in Sydney Harbor. It used to be a penitentiary and then a shipbuilding island. So it had all these old industrial buildings and lots of rough steel pieces around. I think they thought of me because I was in the process of working on a submarine in Montenegro at the time. And there were some, I think, submarine parts and boat parts. And they asked if I wanted to cut up something there, which I loved. But they ended up finding a shipping container for me. So I was there for a month working on it. I cut it up with a plasma cutter into, called it a domestic cage. So I do a lot of work with dirt, ephemeral pieces where I sift dirt through lace patterns. I sift it through onto people and I photograph it and objects. And since I was in Australia, I used the sand and created in this huge, huge industrial space. I covered the floor with from the desert and created this rug out of the sand. I mean, I love doing something like a Biennale. I love that there are people from so many different countries and we're all kind of communicating the same language. It was a wonderful experience. I loved being there.
Did that collaboration and experience with so many others enhance your artistic development?
It's more that I like making the connections with people, I think, and I like the change of venue. You know, I'm a very introverted artist. I spend a lot of time alone in my studio, and I love doing residencies and biennales because it forces me out of my comfort space and to meet other people and to see fresh ideas and talk with people. I think that concentration of people working around you, sometimes it causes conflict, which is a positive thing as well. I kind of go back and forth. I work alone in my studio for long periods of time, and then I realize, okay, I got to get out and meet other people, and so I'm in that stage right now where I need to get out of the studio and travel a bit with other people.
In addition to collaborating with other people, does the surrounding culture and environment have a part in the outcome?
I think where I live right now really suits me because I am both a country person and a city person, and I live about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Manhattan. And the Hudson Valley is so beautiful and quiet, and I need that. I need that isolation and solitude to think clearly and to read and to study. And then I also feel like I really need a place like New York City and Brooklyn to see what other artists are doing, and not just from the U.S., but what I love about New York is that it is very international. You meet artists from all over the world and see what people are making. So I crave both of those worlds, and I really do appreciate and feel very honored to live where I do for that reason. I'm definitely not a performance artist, although I feel like the process of what I do is kind of a performance. This spring or fall, I'm going to be doing a performance piece. My husband owns a bar up here in Peekskill, New York, and they do drag shows there, and I'm going to be part of that, where I'm going to be a drag king, and I'm going to have a big I-beam there where I'm going to use the oxyacetylene torch, which is more dramatic and creates a lot more flame, and I'm going to cut it down the middle and turn it into a vagina beam, sort of turning a phallic symbol into more of a vaginal symbol.
How does your style vary the different materials you work with?
A lot of it has to do with the technique and the process, although I don't romanticize the handmade. It's just the way I usually think is in the process of getting some things machine-made now as I'm getting older. But one of the things I've been making lately is coming back to my hairdressing roots, is I'm doing hairstyles on tires. I had a show in Germany where I got some large tires, and then I put hair on them, and then I French braided the tires. So I always found the pattern of a tire tread to be similar to the pattern of a French braid. So I started making different hairstyles on tire, mimicking tread patterns with hair. And it is, as much as I socially didn't fit into the hairdressing world, I really like, working with my hands and creating patterns and doing something a little more abstract. So I'm coming back to using things like that. And same with the dirt and the sand sifting pieces. That originated from seeing my grandmother decorate cakes with doilies. She put doilies on cakes and sift sugar through it and lift it up. I like that combination or contrast of the industrial and the domestic worlds for me. It was a kind of a visual balance. I was never very interested in creating a specific political comment. I guess I see my work as more as a visual devil's advocate, questioning the judgments that we do place on things, people, objects, images. I like to think of them as there's humor involved in it, the ridiculousness.
And along with your very innovative combination of your hairdressing and your art practice, would you like to share your experience and advice on how you successfully gain such valuable representation with some prominent galleries and museums and other avenues to increase your local and international exposure?
That is it's a tricky world, but I feel like I've been quite lucky in some sense that I was in the right places at the right time, I guess, because I'm not a very sociable person. I know when I first started out, people kept telling me, you have to go to the openings and you have to meet people and make the connections. So I kind of assumed I wasn't going to be very successful because I don't have that kind of drive or that kind of interest in the social aspects of the art world. So actually starting art school later in life, I was very motivated. I've been wanting to go to art school my whole life, and it was a struggle to get there. And so I just worked really hard, and I think I stood out, and that's how I got this show at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. And that show was written up in Sculpture magazine. I also got that award, which sent me to New York. And I also became friends with June Leaf and Robert Frank at the time, who had a place in Nova Scotia and in New York, and they brought me down to New York a few times, and I stayed with them. They were there for me. June was very supportive of my career and my life, trying to move on. And then when I moved to New York, to go to grad school, I got a scholarship for grad school. And I felt like things just sort of unfolded in front of me. I met an artist here. I got this amazing, incredible situation where I have art patrons here who gave me a house to live in, rent-free, in the Hudson Valley. I give them artwork whenever I can. And that's given me the freedom to focus on my work. When I was in grad school, I was put in this exhibition for one of the up-and-coming grad students, I guess, to look out for. And that led to a Chelsea gallery in New York City, which led to museum shows, which, one thing just led to another. It just kept kind of branching out from there. I guess I let it unfold naturally in front of me. And now that I'm, 50 and I'm in that sort of mid-career, midlife time, I feel like it's a change again. I think when you're new on the scene, everybody seems to be very interested in you, and then they naturally sort of start to not get interested in you. I feel like I'm in this new stage, I guess. I taught when I was going through grad school, but I haven't done much teaching since, and now I feel more drawn to being more sociable and teaching more. We'll see what that brings.
Well, you certainly have even more to offer students.
Right, that's what I felt. I felt like this would be the right age and time to become more a teacher. I feel like I have definitely a lot to talk about now, and a lot of experience and a lot of travels. I've had a lot of gallery representation. At one point I had 8 different galleries representing me, and as difficult as that was and stressful as that was, I learned a lot how to deal with galleries and the contrasts that happen there, because that's always a struggle with artists and galleries. It's like a relationship with somebody that isn't always easy.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for speaking with us tonight, and I wish you continued success in your career and good luck with your upcoming performance.
Good luck with the vagina beam. Thank you.
Okay. That was Cal Lane, internationally renowned Canadian sculptor, speaking with us from New York. I'm your host, Susan Cohn, and we thank you for listening to Art World Innovators here on UMFM 101.5 at the University of Manitoba. Join us again next Wednesday from 5:30 to 6 p.m. for more on today's innovators in the art world.